Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Trek Politics. I'm Mary Trump here with my friend and co-host Bob Seska. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Hey, Mary, how you doing? I'm really looking forward to everyone seeing this interview with Spencer Garrett today. You may know him as crewman Simon Tarsus in the incredible season 4 episode of TNG called The Drumhead. You might also recognize Spencer from Air Force One, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Charlie Wilson's War, so many other great films. He's also appeared in just about every TV series ever made, Mary. Mad Men, Bosch, For All Mankind, The Comey Rule, The Residents. But today we're focusing on The Drumhead as a follow-up, as a companion to our previous talk about this outstanding episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Mary.
Yeah, Spencer is a phenomenal character actor. His CV is insane. The shows he's done, and actually one of my favorite performances of his ever was an episode of Bird Notice back in 2010. So we know that you are absolutely going to love this interview. Let's dive in.
Incoming transmission.
Trek Politics with Mary L. Trump and Bob Seska.
I just dug these out. I thought you'd get a kick out of them. My little Star Trek little playing cards that somebody made up and sent me.
Oh, that's great.
So I would sign. They sent me like 5,000 of them to sign, and so I got to save a couple for myself. This is a little. We can bust this out later, but this is an action figure that a fan made for me. Some guy in Germany. Is that lovely? A Simon Tarsus action figure.
That's a one-off. That was just a fan made.
That's a one.
Right?
That's a one-off. And he made me. He said, I'm going to make you one, and I'm going to send it to you. And I said, Can you make one for me and one for my mom, because she would be so proud to know that her son got to be an action figure. And then the whole back of it is like my whole, Simon Tarsus's bio and stats and rank and all that.
Spencer, you and I have a mutual friend. I've known Steven Weber for like 15 years now.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, you're part of this amazing secret society of actors. I mean, Eric McCormick, Alfred Molina, Rob Morrow, Bryan Cranston, Richard Kind, LeVar Burton, of course. How did you guys all meet up?
It's actually not so secret anymore. Because several of the guys, like Noah Wiley, has been on several talk shows for the Pit, and because of the postings of the pictures on Instagram and stuff, everybody kind of wants to know about it. We tried to keep it a little Cosa Nostra, try to keep it to ourselves as much as we could. But whenever McCormick or Noah or Weber would go on and plug a show or doing a project they were part of, somebody would inevitably ask about it. It actually started in 2017. Alfred Molina, who's a very old friend, we'd had his late wife and my mother were experiencing some health issues at the same time, and we're just old pals. He's an old teacher of mine and an old friend. We've worked together a couple of times. And so he reached out to me and he said, let's stop texting and let's go be like people and go have a cocktail somewhere and commiserate. So we did. And we made a plan to meet at Musso and Frank's, which is the oldest restaurant in Hollywood, this classic old Hollywood joint. And so one thing sort of led to another. And Alfred said, hey, do you mind if I invite Steven Weber? And I said, sure. I love Weber. I've known him forever. And then Weber texted me and said, do you mind if I bring Titus Welliver, who's, probably best known for Bosch? And literally it kind of snowballed into this. Suddenly there were 6 of us, Lawrence Fishburne and me and Weber and Titus and Eric. And we looked around and we were like, this is a great group of guys. Let's do this. Let's make a habit of this. So I think it was Alfred that sort of came up with the moniker, the CADS, the Character Actors Dining Society. And about 3 weeks later, we all met at the Smokehouse, which is another. We said, if we're going to do this, let's meet at some classic old school LA, LA joint. So the next week we met at the Smokehouse, which is a great old place across the street from Warner Brothers. And we added in Jason Alexander. And then the following month it was Kevin Pollak. And then before you knew it, and then LeVar, and then Bryan Cranston. And when we sort of ran a little risk of, when we started posting pictures of these little dinners, not knowing that it would turn into this 6-year thing. We're now in the middle of writing a book together.
Wow. What's that book about? Tell me about the book real quick.
The book is Brian. Brian struck a deal. Cranston made a deal with Crown Books, and we are in the process of each of us. There's sort of 12 of us now, the core group of 12.
Mhm.
And now the rule is, because the tables got so big, we outgrew restaurants. There's another place called Dantana's. We went there for a while. That became our sort of go-to. And then eventually, when we added in, Michael McKeon and Paul McCrane and Rob Morrow, and it really got out of control. And we said, we got to find a bigger table. Like with Jaws, we need a bigger boat. We need a bigger table, or we need to start our own restaurant. So we found a place called Craig's in West Hollywood. And so that's sort of become our go-to. It's a big round, sort of Algonquin round table. And Brian, about a year ago, had a wonderfully written autobiography, his autobiography called A Life in Parts, that came out about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it was done through Crown Books, Crown Penguin. And so he struck a deal for the core group of 12 of us to contribute 2 stories each to a book. And there were several topics that each of us was asked to speak about. And it was like, who are your mentors? What is your favorite story that you tell at dinner parties? Your favorite showbiz story? Who's the most wonderful person you've ever performed with? Just little anecdotes, theatrical anecdotes, set stories, things like that. Things that we think that people would find interesting. So we're each of us is sort of flooding this. We're actually having dinner with him tomorrow night with our editor from Crown, and he's gone through all of the stories. We each of us wrote about 5-6 stories, sent them in. He's editing them. We've all sent in all of our photos and videos from the various dinners, and excerpts from the text thread that has been this ongoing text thread amongst the 12 of us.
Wow!
And then tomorrow night we're going to sit down at dinner, and he's going to record our conversation. The proceeds, the best part is the proceeds from the book are all going to charity. They're all going to the Motion Picture Television Fund, the Alzheimer's Association, the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, things like that. So it's all going right straight back into charity. It's just a heck of a lot of fun. But that's how it started. And then whenever there is an open chair, the 12 of us, like trying to get 12 actors to agree on a time and date for dinner is like, nailing Jell-O to a tree. So we decided that whenever there was an open chair, we would invite someone to come and join us. So last month it was Christopher McDonald, and the month before that it was Ron Perlman. So it's just actors that know each other and like each other and that have worked with each other, and we have stories to tell. And it's a great sort of brotherhood and kind of more of a support group than anything else at this point. It's just a great group of guys.
Is there one member of the group who holds court more than the others?
I would say when he's in town, there are 2 New York-based cads. One is Richard Kind. If you know Richard Kind's work at all, one of the funniest humans on the planet, literally an encyclopedia of jokes and theater history. And he's sort of when he comes to town, when he's in LA, he holds court, and probably Kevin Pollak is the other one. Kevin Pollak and Weber. And Weber's one of the funniest, our mutual friend, Steven Weber, who's also in the Star Trek, universe. One of the funniest people I know. But Richard Kind and Danny Burstein, who's a Broadway legend. Those are our 2 New York guys. But Richard is like, we always love it when Richard is in town, because that we're just going to get stories, for the next 2-3 hours of dinner. But he's great. The guys are all great. And Richard is a legend, and we'll always slip out the door before the check comes. So we always have to, we always bust his chops about that, but somebody always ends up getting stuck with the check at the end of the night, and
right.
Richard's smart enough to skip out the door before that happens.
So he's that guy.
He's that guy.
Fun.
He's that guy, but we don't begrudge him that at all.
So, Spencer, how does it feel to be asked about a role you played 34 years ago? Because I'm sure this is not the first time you've done an interview about playing Simon Tarsus in that TNG episode, one of the greatest episodes of any Star Trek show.
It's I love it. It's wonderful. And I literally, get recognized for that particular role on that show more than any other thing that I've ever done, which I'm enormously grateful for. I love it. I wasn't really, I didn't realize when I did the show at the time, which was in 92, I guess. I didn't realize
91.
91. And I had no idea back then, because it was one of my earliest jobs. I moved out here from New York in 89, 90. And so it was one of the first jobs that I'd gotten. I really had no idea what a big deal it was. I had no idea of the lore of the show and the fan base and the following. I was kind of blithely ignorant of that. Surprisingly, my godfather was an actor. You're a massive fan, I'm sure.
How can you tell?
Well, but I mean, maybe the T-shirt or the things on the wall.
That's right. Yeah.
But my godfather was an actor named Liam Sullivan, and he was on an episode called Plato's Stepchildren on the original show on TOS. And I forget I can't remember his character's name. I'm sure maybe you know it. It was like Saren or Sauron. He was the guy who was making Shatner and the dwarf actor Michael Dunn move around on a chessboard,
right,
in that episode. And so when I got cast on Next Gen, I called my godfather and I said, I am so not in the Star Trek world at all. I said, what the hell is a Romulan? What is? And he said, you better do some homework before you. And this is before the internet. I mean, this is before. So I asked my friends who were better versed in that world than I, because Tarsus was a quarter Romulan, and so I had enough information. I mean, I auditioned on Monday, got the call on Tuesday, was at a fitting on Wednesday, and then probably on set on Thursday. So there was not a lot of time to do a lot of research. So I was kind of flying blind. When I look back at that episode, there's a part of me the Spencer that wishes I could go back in a time machine and go back and recalibrate that performance with all that I know now. But I listen, I love it when fans come up to me all over the world and say the Drumhead, Simon Tarsus, and it's just extraordinary to me. I went to my first convention 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was the 30th anniversary of Next Gen, I want to say, and I had never been to any convention of any kind, and I was astonished at how people were sort of lining up, and they're coming up to me and saying, where have you been? Like we've been waiting to meet you, and it was so lovely. And I still have great friends that I've met at that first convention to this day. So it's a special community. It really, really is. And of course, getting to be friends, directed by Frakes, who I've worked with now maybe 8 times on different things that he's directed over the years. LeVar directed me on a show. We did the Tiger Woods story together. LeVar is a very dear friend, and I saw Sir Patrick a few months ago. I mean, and they are inextricably bound, that whole group of folks from that show. So I'm honored to be a part of it. I really am.
And you were really thrown into the deep end, because here you are. It's one of your first roles. You were 27, 28 years old.
Something like that. Yeah, 27. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're performing with Gene Simmons, not the guy from Kiss, the other Gene Simmons.
By the way, and I said, who's playing Admiral Settee? And the casting director said Gene Simmons, and I went, wow, that's amazing. No idea.
Is he wearing his makeup? What's going on?
Walked into the makeup trailer fully expecting to meet Gene Simmons, and it's Gene Simmons from Spartacus, who you look at her in Spartacus and Guys and Dolls, her iconic roles from the 50s and 60s back in the day. I mean, she was a great beauty. And still was in 89 or not. Was it 91? You said it was 91. Walked into the makeup trailer, just stunningly beautiful with the mouth of a sailor. And I was like, we are going to be, we're going to be great friends. Yeah, we're going to be great. I was actually happy that it wasn't the other Gene Simmons, because I would have been so intimidated by the guy from Kiss. But Gene Simmons from Spartacus playing this elegant, chilling, wonderful character. I mean, it was so great to act with her. So I had her, I'm on the witness stand. I've got Gene Simmons. I've got Sir Patrick Stewart, who, as a kid, I grew up watching on PBS. He was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company, and it was him and Ian McKellen and Judi Dench. And there used to be a thing on PBS called Acting Shakespeare with John Barton. And I used to watch young Patrick Stewart. And it was basically like these great, great Shakespearean actors from the Royal Shakespeare Company acting out scenes for John Barton, who was a director. And so it was just an education for a young kid who thought he wanted to be an actor then. And to find, to ultimately be sitting across from him, in 10 Forward in the, in his quarters, acting with this icon. It was the look on my face when you see that episode and the nerves. That was all real, because I was genuinely nervous, because it was one of my first gigs, and I was very green, and I was also very intimidated by him. He couldn't have been sweeter, but I was just, the whole experience, not feeling entirely comfortable in my skin, and knowing who this guy was, and just all of it. And so it all of the elements kind of came together, and I think it worked.
Yeah, and you brought a sense of vulnerability to the role, I thought, and it really jumps off screen, and it's so much so that it kind of feels like Gene Simmons is kicking a puppy. You know what I mean? It's because she's so brutal. And
100%.
She becomes so paranoid and maniacal toward the end of the episode. And
Yeah.
you are portraying this character who's just a deer in the headlights, like suddenly caught up in this alleged conspiracy.
Yeah.
I love the contrast between her ferocity and your nervous vulnerability. In fact, one of the things I mentioned when Mary and I first talked about the Drumhead a few weeks ago is how you brought kind of this realistic edge to your line deliveries, where you're doing a little bit of stammering and kind of repeating word. It almost felt like a Mamet script.
Interesting.
Mamet always works in those little stops and starts in the language, very specific about how the language is handled, where people will stammer or say a word and backtrack and say a different word in place of that word. And I noticed that in your part. Was that something that came out of your nervousness, or was that something you may have discussed with Frakes beforehand in terms of how Simon Tarsus should be in these scenes where he's being relentlessly grilled?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. But I think it was genuine nerves, and I remember conferring with Jonathan a lot, because I really wanted to get this guy right. It was a big role for me back then for a young actor. I mean, it was. I remember when I booked the job, and I walked into Paramount, and there was 25 guys, and it was the same 25 guys, by the way, that I would see in every room at every audition for the next 25 years for ER and NYPD Blue, and it was like a whole group of us. We would all see each other. So I remember coming out of there and thinking, wow, this is a big responsibility. And it was a meaty role. And I hadn't had anything that substantial up till that point, I don't think. Maybe I did an episode of 21 Jump Street, I think, that was a significant lead role. But this had heft to it, and there was politics involved. And I remember being cognizant of the fact that I was talking about, in retrospect, looking at the way that episode was written, and I talked to Jonathan about this, and LeVar and some other people that came up to me at the convention that said, that episode was really kind of a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic. To a certain
interesting.
Extent. I was a character that had sort of been ostracized and otherized by the political higher ups. And, when I was put on trial for my beliefs, essentially, you can granularly distill it down to that if you want to. But I remember talking with Jonathan about that. So Yeah, a lot of the kind of the stammering and all of that.
Mhm.
That was genuine nerves, and I remember because I'd gone to my acting teacher at the time, which was it was a man named Sanford Meisner,
I was
who's
just
a
going to
wonderful
ask.
acting.
Yeah.
And he coached me on it, and so interestingly, you mentioned Mamet because Mamet
Mhm.
was a kind of an acolyte of Sandy Meisner's, and so I remember kind of peppering in some of those stammers and the hemming and hawing, and but there was a real innocence to him and a real kind of fragility about this young kid who was really an innocent.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the lines to this day. You're talking about like sitting on the bench and looking up at the stars and dreaming. He was a real dreamer, and I was too, at that time, and still am. And so it was such a great meeting of what was going on with me in my life and that role and that moment and being with Patrick. And the great actor Bruce French, who was also grilling me, terrific actor. I remember definitely being nervous with him when I was on the witness stand. It didn't take a lot. I mean, it was an intimidating experience, and so I just used all that to as much as I was able to. My real genuine nerves because he was certainly in the hot seat.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just to be clear about this role was not just some random walk-on role. I mean, as far as kind of a one-off character, you mentioned the word heft, and that I think speaks volumes. So you've got this great marriage between you as an actor and a role that had so much weight to it and so much gravity to it. And there, if you don't mind me saying, you have a kindness in your eyes. And I think that's one of the things that provided this sense of empathy that you feel for Simon Tarsus in this episode. So much so that when he fibs about the fact that he says he's half Vulcan, but he's actually half Romulan, you kind of forgive that because you're like, okay, this is a kid and he's in an impossible situation. He's being grilled by this admiral, and there's a captain in the room, and there's a Klingon breathing down his neck. And then there's a Beta Z guy, Sabine, who is reading your very emotions. So just the weight you as an actor must have felt just being around these powerhouses and then playing this character who is concurrently around these very powerful people.
100%.
And so you feel bad for Simon Tarsus. There's never a minute where you go, oh my God, why is this kid lying? Oh, what a bastard he's lying. Oh, he's definitely part of the conspiracy. But that was never there. Are these the sorts of things you were considering, certainly as you were reading Jerry Taylor's amazing script and preparing for the role? Was that vulnerability something that you wanted to bring to it?
Yeah. I mean, and like you said, I mean, you put it perfectly. The confluence of me being a young actor, hadn't done a lot of stuff, thrust into this world that was more iconic than I had really known it to be, and suddenly I'm on this spaceship in this courtroom, surrounded by these people. It all kind of landed on me, particularly in that courtroom scene. In that moment, I'm quite proud of that scene. I look back at it when I see it now. I'm proud of the work, despite my greenness as an actor at the time. But that combination of factors of and the pressure of having to perform. That was all real. That was all genuine. So the fear in my face and the trepidation and the innocence and all of that, that was all me. That was all real. And then when you have a text that's good, that's that substantial and hefty, like Jerry's script, a lot of it, the work is done for you already because the script is so good. So the words were just guiding me.
You mentioned before how if you had a chance to do it over again, the amazing scene with you and Sir Patrick, I think if I recall correctly, it was either in 10 Forward or in your quarters. And you said something to the effect of maybe something you would do over again differently. If you could go back in time, if you could slingshot around the sun and time travel back in time and kind of be your own coach for going into a scene like that, what would you tell your younger self? How would you direct your younger self?
I don't know. I think that my work in that is exactly what it needed to be. I wish that I could sometimes as an actor, we're always second guessing ourselves. I did the last Tarantino movie, and I'm driving home on the way from set after I was on set for an hour and a half. I did a scene with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, and I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, gosh, if only I'd put my arm here, or if I'd only said the word with this inflection, or if I'd only emphasized this syllable more. Things like that. Actors, we're always doing that. We're naturally insecure people. So I always think if I could go back to several of my earlier roles with the hindsight of 20/20 vision and all the life that I've had experienced in the last 34 years, what would I have done differently? I don't know. I'm certainly a better actor now, I think, than I was then. So I would have loved to have gone back and kind of transposed some of the parts that I did in some of the scene with Patrick, particularly. I look at it and I go, yeah, that's who you were. So it's exactly what it needs to be. So I'm just beating myself up. I'm being too hard on myself, to be honest with you. But you get no do-overs in life. So it is what it is. And whenever I see LeVar or Frakes, he always gives me a slap on the back and says, man, you were just terrific. And I think it was one of Jonathan's earlier first directorial, efforts. He just started directing. And so, he always jokes. He says, I made you, man. I created you. I put you on the map. And he kind of did, he kind of did. I mean, that episode was kind of a launching pad for me in a lot of regards. I mean, I had done a few things before that, but that was kind of a watershed moment for me that I look back and I think, I mean, look at me, I got an action figure. So
that's right. Yeah, incredible.
It could have been a different character. It could have been a different episode. But to have been in the Drumhead and to have gotten cast in that role out of those other 25 guys, I look back and go, yeah, that was pretty damn cool.
Yeah. Well, that episode is a perfect storm between a great concept, a wonderful script, an excellent director in his third directorial performance.
Was that his third?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was his third episode of TNG. You know what? I'm not sure if he had directed anything else in between, but I know it was his third episode of TNG directing, Jonathan Frakes. And then also the marriage.
Can I say one thing about Jonathan? I don't know if you had him on or
no, not yet, but I'd love to. Yeah.
Well, you should. He's also, I have to say about Jonathan, because he's become a dear friend over the years. He's an actor who genuinely loves actors, and he's a director. He's become a director who really loves actors, and actors love working with him. And I can't say that about a lot of directors that I've worked with. I find that a lot of the best directors have been actors, or were actors, or still are actors. But I mean, Tim Busfield, who I've worked with a few times from West Wing and 30 something. A lot of the best directors that I've worked with have been actors, and Jonathan is the prime example of that, the prime directive, if you will.
It sounded like he made a safe environment, not only for you as a relatively 100%. New actor, but then the other seasoned pros. It must have been a very nurturing environment, because he's got this great balance between being a serious director and also having this
Yeah.
exuberance. And there's a kind of a sly wit and fun about,
Yes.
from what I've heard about working on a set with Jonathan Frakes. So that must have been nice
100%.
for you.
He makes it fun. He makes it
Yeah.
a joy
Mhm.
to want to come to the set, and it's never work.
Right.
It's never work when you work with Jonathan.
Yeah.
Same with LeVar. They're joyous humans, and they love life, and they love the craft, and they love acting. And so, what a better way to open the door for a young actor than to say, "Come on in, and you're joining our family." And then I remember, just as a side anecdote, after I had wrapped that show, I think I was on it for 10 days, and I'd wrapped that show, and I remember I was gone right from that show, guest starring on this hit Star Trek show, and because the actor's life is what it is, I went to work in a restaurant, and I hadn't really sort of taken off yet. So I thought, if I'm going to work at a restaurant in Los Angeles, I want to work in a restaurant that is as far afield from the entertainment industry as you could. I don't want to be in Beverly Hills or Hollywood, or I'm going to find a place that is off the beaten path, so I can quietly make my money and pay my rent and make my bones and do my thing. And so I found a restaurant in a section of Los Angeles, East Los Angeles, called Silver Lake, that back then in the early 90s was not run down, but it was kind of like, it was sort of, you're in DC, right? So it's like, it was Adams Morgan. It was before Adams Morgan became hip. It was 14th Street before 14th Street became hip. I mean, it was funky, run down. And it was a restaurant that was off the beaten path, and I got a job there as a maitre d'. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. It's not showbiz. It's local people from the neighborhood. And my very first night, swear to God, who walks into the restaurant but Jonathan, Brent Spiner, Whoopi Goldberg, LeVar. And they came into the restaurant because it was jazz night at this particular restaurant, and they were all in a jazz band together. Jonathan played the trombone, and LeVar, they were all like a little band, and Spiner played the trumpet, and they were performing in a little jazz combo in this restaurant called Nicola's. And I was standing there at this is like a week after I wrapped, and they all walked in, and I'm standing there at the podium, and Frakes is like, "What are you doing here?" I said,
I'm waiting tables.
I'm back. I'm back from outer space, and I'm back in Silver Lake, and I'm just paying my rent. It was just strange, and and I thought, okay, well, this is. And I said, "Is this? You guys come here often?" And he said, "Yeah, we're here every Tuesday night." And I said, "Is this? Do other showbiz people come here?" And they said, "No, this is kind of just our little thing." And I said, "Okay, that's perfect." So yeah. I stayed there for about a year. I worked, and then I started getting more and more auditions and more jobs. And the owner of the restaurant said, he said, "You have to decide if you want to be an actor or a maitre d'." And I said, I'm out of here. And that was
difficult Sophie's choice there, isn't it?
Difficult Sophie's choice between, the Occam's razor of, so I chose actor. But how funny is that literally like a week later, half the cast, they all walked in, and I'm standing there, So
it's like, damn it, I couldn't find a place that was off the beaten path enough.
It would have been weird if I was waiting on them, or making their drinks. Yeah. But I was the maitre d', so I was the guy that had to bring them all to their table. Mm-hmm. But they were there to play jazz. They were there to set up and play music and stuff. So it was momentarily awkward, but it was also kind of lovely. And I thought, I grew up in a family of actors. My grandparents were actors. My mom was an actor, my aunt and uncles. So I knew the lay of the land. I knew this is what you had to do. I was catering, waiting tables, tending bar. I was doing whatever I could to make ends meet. That particular week before I started being a maitre d', what I was doing to make ends meet as an actor was being an actor. So it's part of the when you buy the ticket and take the ride, that's what you get. So. But listen, they've all become friends, and it was whenever I see any one of them, they like to tease me about. Remember that time we came into the restaurant And you,
Yeah, you're hoping they forgot about that, but now, 30 years later, you're still
LeVar
getting asked.
yeah, I mean, and when I have dinner, when LeVar joins us for our CADS dinners, he's like, hey Spence, can you bring us some more bread, please? Can you fill up the water on table 12?
Nice. Yeah, you're like, shut up. Come on.
Yeah.
30 years ago. What do you want from me?
Never forget where you came from.
Exactly. Yeah. So before I let you go, Spencer, I have to ask you, have you been called to do the sequel to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Well, interesting. It's I don't know if it's a sequel. You're talking about the Brad Pitt, The Adventures of Cliff Booth. Nobody from it takes place several years later, from what I understand. David Fincher is doing it, and it's not necessarily a sequel. It's sort of a kind of a fast forward, but nobody from the movie is doing it. Believe me, nobody from the film is in this this iteration of it. It's Brad Pitt. It's his own kind of standalone story. I would have loved to have been in it. I would have loved to have reprised my Alan Kincaid guy. You see get the poster there behind me. It's such a fun thing to be a part of. But no, they're not. They weren't. I as soon as I heard they were doing it, I raised my hand and I said, let me in. But no, not. But I was relieved to know that nobody else from the movie was doing it either. So I'm still waiting to. What's that? Oh no, I mean, is Picard is wrapped? Is there Picard still happening?
No, they're not doing another season of that. Although,
right.
One of the things I was going to ask you about is, good Lord, I hope they get to do what Terry Matalas is planning. He was originally planning a sequel series to Picard called Legacy. And it would be great to have Simon Tarsis come back and be in that series. Obviously, it's all the same timeline, so it could happen.
I have definitely floated that. 10 years after TNG, I was asked to come back and do Voyager. I did a 2-part Voyager.
Yeah. As a hologram,
which was great because I was a hologram and I got to look completely different and play a completely different guy, and that to me, just as an actor, that was a kind of a cool validation in a certain way of the business and particularly the Star Trek universe saying, welcome back. You're in the club, because they don't let a lot of people come in. Law and Order, people come and go. You see that show and New York actors, but to have been asked to come back 10 years later as a completely different character, it was a different show. It was a different, time frame, but to have asked to come back, that was very cool for me. That was when Ken Biller and Brandon Braga were running the show, and so to get to come back and do that was super cool. So those are kind of nice bookends to what happened to my career in the 10 years between TNG and Voyager. Things started to kind of roll along pretty nicely. So I owe so much to the casting director, Junie Lowry, who put me on the show, and Jonathan, and I still have my costume somewhere. They let me keep my spandex jumpsuit. And
that's so cool.
I still have my ears. Michael Westmore I had my little rubber pointed ears. I have several pairs of them. They've all all the little latex. They've all kind of crumbled away, but it's
Spencer, you were kind of in another Star Trek series, at least in my mind. For All Mankind, I think is, again, I don't think this is an actual thing, but I feel like For All Mankind is a prequel to Star Trek, at least.
Interesting.
Yeah. And obviously, I don't think Ron Moore considered that to be the same thing, because in fact, I think they mentioned Star Trek in For All Mankind at least a couple of times. So,
what's funny is I've never met Ron Moore. I don't believe I've ever met Ron Moore.
Wow.
But apparently Ron Moore thought of me to play this version of, I was playing a version of an NBC anchor named Roger Mudd.
Yes.
Who was a big, that, and there was kind of a character that was loosely based on Diane Sawyer, and there was there was a kind of a Barbara Walters-ish character and a Walter Cronkite-ish character. I was the Roger Mudd, and but Ron had sort of thought of me because of my work on on Star Trek. So that was nice. But I don't think I've ever met him. But I did two seasons. I think it was 2 or 3 or 3 or 4.
Excellent. Yeah,
but
yeah.
That was a lot of fun. And all of those scenes, if you watch For All Mankind, all of that stuff that I did as the newscaster, I shot entirely in one day. All of those things we did. Wow. Every scene that I was in, from 7 a.m. till 10 at night, we shot all of those scenes on that soundstage. So I shot it all out in one day, which was kind of wild.
That's just incredible. Yeah. Well, Spencer, thank you again for your time today, and we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
I would love to, man. What a treat. What a treat.
Take care. Really appreciate it.
All right. Be good.
That was incredible. I'm very sad I was not here for that, but it seemed like you guys had plenty of fun without me.
Oh, yes. I love the custom action figure that he brought along of Simon Tarsus. Initially, I was like, wait a second, there's a Simon Tarsus action figure and I don't own it? And he was like, well, no, someone made it for me. A fan made this custom for me. But someone needs to get on that. Maybe Nacelle can make a custom Simon Tarsus action figure as one of their upcoming lines.
Either that or a 3D printer could do the trick.
That's right. There you go. That's all you need.
Okay, so next week we are going to be speaking about a Star Trek original series episode called A Private Little War. Right? So I think that it is timely.
There's going to be lots to talk about when it comes to A Private Little War. What they did right, some of the things they did wrong. There's one thing that I focus on with this episode. We'll get to it next week, Mary. I don't want to spoil anything.
But as always, we're looking at these episodes, viewing them along many different dimensions. Mm-hmm. So there will be spoilers. So if you want to enjoy our discussion as much as possible, please take the time to watch A Private Little War, and we will see all of you next week.